What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a new versus video, Dying Light 2 versus Dead Island 2. These two games have a lot of similarities, but they also have some distinct differences that set them apart from one another. Let's get into it. Let's start with the game world of Dying Light 2. This is probably one of the biggest differences that sets itself apart from Dead Island 2. But before we get into that, let's start with the visuals. Visually, the game looks good, but it's nothing that'll blow you away. So Dying Light takes place in a dystopian-like world, so aesthetically you'll see a lot of rundown buildings, plants, grass and tree overgrowth, and garbage, makeshift buildings, and things like that scattered everywhere. But let's get back to how Dying Light separates itself. The first major thing is that Dying Light offers a seamless world experience, unlike Dead Island 2. The next major difference is the day and night cycle and how it changes the dynamics of the game world. See, when it's day out, you see less zombies because they're all hidden inside the buildings. And when it's night outside, the zombies roam the streets, leaving the buildings abandoned and to be easily looted. Another component of the day-night cycle is the behavior of the zombies. They are faster and much more aggressive towards you at night. Now, the third thing Dying Light does to separate itself is the parkour system they have in place. In Dying Light, you will spend a lot of time running, jumping, sliding, climbing, and swinging across rooftops and pretty much anywhere else. It's a really nice fluid system that feels satisfying when chaining sequences together. Now, those are some of the major differences. Some of the other things you'll be doing is unlocking outposts, completing side missions, completing racing missions, finding collectibles, and gathering resources for crafting and things like that. And that just about sums up the game world for Dying Light 2. Let's head over to Dead Island. So the game world in Dead Island 2 is a bit more traditional. It doesn't seem to have those dynamics that Dying Light has. But before we get into that, let's talk visuals. Visually, the game looks good. Personally, I think it looks more crisp than Dying Light, but it's not like the graphics will blow you away here either. Dead Island 2 takes place in a blood-soaked California that has been quarantined. Now, it hasn't hit dystopian-like levels that Dying Light has reached, but it still looks bad. Aesthetically, it's a bit cleaner than Dying Light, but you will still find abandoned cars all over, abandoned buildings, trash scattered about, blood smeared everywhere, and things you normally associate with a zombie apocalypse. Okay, so what are some of the differences here? Well, the first major one I previously mentioned, and that was Dead Island 2 not having a seamless world experience. Instead, Dead Island separates itself into regions, so you'll visit areas like Bel Air, Venice Beach, Beverly Hills, and a few more. And within those areas like Bel Air, there are loading screens that lead you into different areas. Now, the areas are a decent size and offer some explorability. So Dead Island does have a day-night cycle, but they are more sequenced and tend to change after certain events happen instead of progressively changing as time goes on. Some other things you'll be doing around the world are side quests, looking for crafting resources, and finding collectibles. And that really sums up Dead Island 2's game world. It's really standard at best and doesn't offer anything unique in the way of gameplay mechanics and things like that. That'll do it here. Let's go head over to combat. Dying Light's combat focuses on hacking and slashing primarily, with a bit of range combat thrown in. And when I say range combat, I'm not referring to guns, but bows, crossbows, and things like that. In fact, there are no guns in Dying Light at all, which is one of the key differences when comparing it to Dead Island 2. Instead, you'll use a huge selection of melee weapons like katanas, sledgehammers, axes, knives, and many more. The combat in Dying Light is satisfying and feels good in the hands. Combat has a really gruesome look and a visceral feel to it. You'll be able to sever bodies, explode zombie heads, completely blow them apart, and much more. Another key element to Dying Light's combat is the parkour. You'll use it to quickly close the gap on your enemy from any position. Not only that, you'll be able to unlock parkour-specific combat moves to take advantage of. Now, Dying Light does follow more of an RPG format, so your character and enemies do have levels attached to them. Associated with that comes a skill tree to upgrade your character in combat. Dying Light has two skill trees, one for combat and the other for parkour, and of course you gain skill points depending on what you do in game. Another major component of the combat is the loot, which has levels and rarities associated with them. The rarity system is typical, which you'll see in most RPGs, ranging from white to gold, and the better the rarity, the better the perks for it, and so on. The next part of combat I wanted to touch on is crafting, because it's such an important element in both games, and you'll often be crafting new weapons, throwables, and consumables. Dying Light allows you to craft your armor and your weapons using the resources collected around the world. You'll be able to craft most weapons and do things like add different elements to them, such as shock or fire. Also, you'll be crafting things like pipe bombs or landmines, and even projectiles for your ranged weapons. Lastly, you'll be crafting consumables to help aid you through your journey, like med packs. And finally, let's talk about the enemies. Dying Light offers a decent amount of zombies to fight against, and regular humans as well. You'll have your typical slow zombies, while you'll have others that do something special. An example is the Howler, who alerts other zombies, or the Virals, who are very fast and will put your parkouring to the test. As I mentioned before, zombies become stronger and are more abundant at night. You'll even have a threat level that goes up the longer zombies remain in pursuit of you. And that just about sums up all the elements of combat for Dying Light. Let's check out Dead Island 2. Like Dying Light 2, most of Dead Island's combat consists of hack and slash melee combat. That'll see you using a lot of different melee weapons like baseball bats, rakes, machetes, and more. Now, Dead Island 2 does have guns, which is one of the major differences in the combat makeup. They range from assault rifles to shotguns. You know, your typical gun format. Combat here is very satisfying as well. It feels very good in the hands and visually is a treat to look at. Dead Island has such a grotesque look and a visceral feel to it. You will see every layer of flesh come off the enemy with each hit. There's a ton of gore here as well, from exploding zombies to severing limbs and other things. Now, Dead Island does follow a looser RPG setup as well. You and your enemies will have levels attached to them. Associated with the leveling system comes a perk or card system that you will use to fine-tune your character. This card system is broken up into 4 categories: abilities, survivor, slayer, and Newman, with each having their own cards. You'll swap cards in and out to fit your playstyle. Let's jump over to the loot because it's just as important here as well. Similar to Dying Light, loot is broken up into tiers ranging from gray to gold. The higher the tier, the more mod and perk slots you get with your weapons. One thing that differs with the loot here is that you don't have to worry about collecting armor, only weapons, so it's a bit more streamlined. Next, let's talk crafting. Crafting primarily consists of you crafting new weapons and consumables. You will gather resources around the world to craft your weapons and put perks on them or status effects like fire, acid, or shock. Overall, there's less to craft here than in Dying Light. You don't really have to worry about crafting throwables because those are on a cooldown timer, and you don't have to worry about crafting armor. That may be a pro or con to some, but it's a more streamlined approach. Finally, let's talk enemies. You have a decent variety here as well. Your main zombies are fairly slow and are easy to take down. Then you have others like runners who will sprint at you, closing the gap pretty fast. Or you have the brutes that are zombies that look like they've been in the gym all day. These ones are more tanky and require a lot more damage to take out. And that sums up the combat here. Now that we've more or less compared all of the main elements of each game, let's wrap this up. These are both 2 good open world zombie survival games. However, I think Dying Light 2 is the better experience. To me, Dead Island didn't do anything that Dying Light didn't do. But if you reverse that, Dying Light does everything Dead Island does, plus more. As always, it comes down to personal preference, and that was just my take after playing both games. I think the main difference comes down to what type of experience you want. If you want a more vast RPG experience with a lot more gameplay elements and mechanics, Dying Light will be a better fit. If you want something more streamlined, a bit more on the rails type experience, Dead Island may be for you. As for me, Dying Light is my preference as I feel like it offers me a better zombie survival experience. Now, I know I could have went a lot more in depth, but I really wanted to keep this surface level as I didn't want to be here all day. This video really just serves as a basis if you're trying to decide between the two. But enough of what I think. I'd love to know what y'all think in the comments below. What did you think about this versus video? Which game do y'all like better and why? Have you ever played these games? Let me know, but that's all I got for now. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and if y'all did, please drop a like and a sub. It goes a long way, and I got more coming. Catch y'all next time.